Hello, movie lovers. Welcome to my channel, Quick Reel. Today, we're going to recap the movie Soldier Boy. The boy was awakened by the sound of someone knocking on the door. He quickly took care of her, because he believed that the person outside was his mother. However, he's surprised by the appearance of his Aunt Anisha. The woman was scared and asked the boy to pack his bags and leave. Anisha informed him that the boy's mother and brother had been killed, and that if the soldiers discovered that Saraza was her sister's son, they would kill him too. Her plan was to capture the boy and say he was her son, but before they could escape, German soldiers invaded the house. The woman helped. OSA escaped through a window, but ended up being shot. The terrified boy ran into the forest and tried to find shelter in his heart. He still believes that his mother will find him, but the young man could hardly have imagined the challenges he would face now. A few hours have passed, and OSA must find a way to survive alone while drinking water on the riverbank. The boy was surprised by the appearance of some soldiers, traumatized by what happened. He soon found a place to hide. Within minutes, Sergei slid between the roots of a large tree. But something unexpected happened. A snake appeared next to him. The child was scared to death, but despite that, he forced himself to stay silent. For him, there is no greater fear than the fear of having to suffer the same fate as his family members. Meanwhile, the soldiers lit a fire and took the time to rest. After eating, they turned off the fire and left. At that moment, Kosa finally escaped from this dark snake. Hungry, the boy picked up one of the cans left by the man, hoping to find some leftovers there. Several days had passed, and the boy was so weak that he could barely walk. He found some small fruits along the way, but soon the place was bombed and Syria had to flee. It started to rain that afternoon. However, the boy was exhausted and had no strength left to go out and find shelter. A few hours later, he was found by two Russian soldiers and taken back to camp. There, OSA was greeted by Kuznetsov, the commander, who immediately asked his men for help in feeding and caring for the boy. From that day on, the boy was called by his new nickname, Sergei. A few hours pass, and the soldiers try to distract themselves by talking about family members before starting a new battle. But when they least expected it, a bomb suddenly appeared in the infirmary. Sergei is treated by Nurse Kaya because of the attack. The wounded just arrived on the scene, and the woman rushed to treat them all, including the weakest and injured. Sergei was not silent for a minute and showed his enthusiasm for the idea of learning more about how to become a soldier. Gradually, the boy will integrate and conquer the hearts of everyone around him. Katia was called by a soldier, and when she reached the tent, she found a goat. Everyone wondered how the animal got to such a place, but they were happy because in the following days they could drink milk and eat cheese, which is extremely rare. In fact, they were alive at that time. Kuznetsov and his gang appear. The man immediately went to see Sergei and was relieved to see that the boy was gradually recovering. Sergei shows off the battle tank he designed on his belly. He then asked Kuznetsov if he owned a plane, discovering that the man had never owned a spaceship. Sergei decided to draw one on the bracelet around his injured arm. When the commander left the tent, Katia worked up the courage to go and talk to him about the boy. The nurse asked the man to leave the boy with them, and Kuznetsov immediately refused the request. He claims a child doesn't belong there and says he'll take him to an orphanage. The next morning, Igor went to talk to Kuznetsov. The soldier tried to convince him to let the boy stay at the camp because the soldiers had become attached to him. After all, when they looked at Sergei, they felt their hearts warm because it was the future of the children that these men were fighting for. However, the commander once again declared that there was no place for children in this war camp. Hours later during an attack, Kuznetsov ordered his soldiers to bomb the enemy while he went to the battlefield to help Kachir, who was rescuing a wounded man. When the battle ends, they return to camp and the orphanage director is there to take Sergei away. The man waited in the car as they said goodbye to the boy, but Kaya was extremely sad and decided to leave without saying goodbye. Kuznetsov invited Sergei to sit next to him and tried to explain to him what would happen from that moment on. However, before he could say anything, the boy started crying and hugged him. He said he was waiting for the commander and was afraid he wouldn't be able to see him again. The man gave him a weapon carved from wood and asked him if the boy wanted to be his son. The two kissed, and Kuznetsov tore up the orphanage documents he had signed. Kuznetsov went to the boy's room to wake him up. The man said that like a real soldier, He had to get dressed in 45 seconds. Then he gave him a new uniform. The boy was extremely happy and ran to get ready. But first he asked why he had put a sticker on the face of Kuznetsov, his new father, and the man asserted that due to negligence, he had committed suicide. Cut yourself while shaving. To count 45 seconds. The commander lit a match and said that Sergei must be ready before the firewood was completely burned. A few games later, they walked out of the tent and Sergei was excited to show off his new uniform to his teammates. At that moment, a sudden attack occurred and the commander ran to protect his son. He ordered one of his men to take the child to a shelter while the others hid in the trenches. During the bombing, the soldiers were injured and the boy went to the infirmary to take care of them. He gave them water and was ready to help them with whatever was needed. One of the blindfolded men asked Serge to read him a letter sent by his family. However, the boy still could not read and began to make up good news to tell the poor soldier. He then presented himself to the commander to find out what his duties for the day would be. Kuznetsov wondered why there was a bandage on the boy's face, and Serge confirmed that due to negligence, he cut his hand while shaving. After listening, he asked his son to take the letters from the arriving truck and distribute them to the soldiers. Sergei decides to use his camouflage suit to sneak into the camp. Looking through binoculars, the boy spotted a pair of boots trying to hide in the hiding place. Immediately he ran back to camp and called some comrades to look for the intruder hiding in the haystack. Andrey and his men went there to check what was going on and ended up meeting 2 enemy soldiers. After exchanging a few shots, they captured the men and Serge returned to the camp. Meanwhile, Commander Kuznetsov learns from one of his men that his son helped capture 2 spies. The man was surprised and proud of the boy's courage and humility. A few days later, during another battle, the boy searched the trenches looking for Igor. After receiving the ammunition, the soldier asked the boy to go to the underground shelter. Sergei refused to abandon his comrades, but Igor was able to convince him that it was an order and that a good soldier must obey the orders of his subordinates. However, the guy decided to help him. He overheard his father and his companions talking about the failed connection. A rope broke, and men were sent to repair it. Sergei decided to chase them and crawled on the ground to avoid being beaten when he found a wounded soldier. He tried to help and asked what to do to fix the wire. Sergei followed the instructions to connect the 2 ends. That way, connectivity will return and the commander can call on reinforcements. This heroic act of the boy may have saved hundreds of lives. Meanwhile, Sergei climbs a tree and uses binoculars to observe the camp. At that moment, he saw a rescue dog arriving at the scene, so he ran to the scene to receive it. A few minutes later, the boy asked permission to walk with them and climbed onto the wheeled stretcher while the animals pulled him. The problem started when on the way the dog spotted a cat and started chasing it. If they continue running like this, they will soon find themselves in a minefield, and the boy's life will be in danger. Realizing this, Rizzo gets on a motorbike and races to stop the dogs before it's too late. Seeing that Serge was not injured in this situation, the soldier was extremely relieved. The next day, the army prepared to depart. A few hours later, they stopped to rest with the farmers after eating. They discovered that a German bomb had fallen on this house, and it was still there. Bullets penetrated the ceiling and floor, but fortunately did not explode. The soldiers then decided to help them get rid of this thing before any damage was done. They then continue walking, and Sergei hitchhikes with Rizzo and his father. Suddenly, their vehicle exploded, and the battalion discovered that they were in a minefield. Sergei and everyone was stunned by the noise. Going a few meters further, the boy discovered that Rizzo was dead when they finally arrived at their destination while his father spoke with the general. Serge asked what his next mission would be. The man asked him to check the soldiers' uniforms, and the boy asked for the help of an officer to complete this task. After examining all the soldiers' boots and overalls, he asked the man to write down the names of those whose uniforms were damaged. After obeying the order, the young man returned to the general's office to submit his report. During the night, Sergei and his father went for a walk in the woods to discuss the upcoming award ceremony. The Gar badge is a badge awarded to those who risk their lives to save the country. This, of course, means that Serge will also receive this award while celebrating the first award. A bomb is dropped, and Cousin itself is buried. The boy tried to get him out of there, but he didn't have enough strength to lift the rubble. Then, after the bombing with the help of his comrades, the commander was taken out of there and treated, although seriously injured. The man continued to recover and was soon ready to leave with his companions the following year, 1943. Serge was honored as the youngest soldier of World War II and eventually received the Medal of Honor. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like, drop a comment, and subscribe to the channel for more exciting movie recaps. See you in the next one.